Okay, it looks like our YouTube feed is online. Again, we apologize for the delay. Mr. McBain, the meeting is yours.
Did we lose him?
I think we might have lost Mr. McBain. He's definitely not in the room there. We want to get started. Dr. Lewis Campbell, would you like to start us off with the pledge? And then we'll see if Mr. McBain jumps back in here in a second.
Okay. I'll call this meeting to order and we'll begin with the pledge, and Tim will take over after that.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis Campbell. I do apologize. Mr. Gilmer, am I coming in all right?
We've got you. I can hear you loud and clear.
Very good. My apologies. Got kicked off right at the right time there. All right. It is my pleasure to call to order the meeting of the ECI committee for August 3rd, 2021. Tonight's meeting is our regularly scheduled committee meeting. In order to meet with the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the committee during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the committee state their name and addresses. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than 5 minutes. I believe it should be 3 minutes most of the time. This limit will permit time for all those who wish to speak to the committee. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the committee chair may ask the individual to yield to the next speaker, in case that hadn't been read already. All right. Can we please move on to the approval of minutes for May 4th, 2021? Is there a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Dr. Lewis Campbell. All in favor, please raise your hand. Thank you very much. All right, items recommended for work session. We have none, but we do have several informational items this evening. And I'll take this moment to make a quick note before we begin these presentations. I'd like to remind our neighbors that while our health and safety plan and the start of our academic year is on all of our minds, this tonight is a committee meeting with many fewer school board members than you might find at a regular meeting. And this is to address middle school math placement and new academic supports for students following the very disruptive impacts of the pandemic. The full board will continue to monitor the potential impacts of the Delta variant, the guidance and stipulations of local, state, and federal institutions, and local statistical trends and indicators. Those discussions will come 1 week from today at our full board work session that'll be held on the 10th, and during our action meeting also this month during the 19th. With that in mind, we like to keep our public comment open at the later portion of the meeting after these presentations are over. And with that, I think I'm ready to turn it over to Dr. Waters, please.
Thank you so much, Mr. McBain. Good evening, everybody, and thank you for having us tonight. Tonight, as Mr. McBain already stated, we are going to be sharing 2 presentations. One, transitioning from 6th grade to 7th grade math, and also, again, just letting you know how we plan to support students post-pandemic when school starts late August. So before the presentations begin, it is my honor to introduce for the first time officially her first ECI meeting, our new Director of Curriculum and Equity, Dr. Pamela Hart, and she will introduce her amazing curriculum team. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Waters. I appreciate that very warm welcome. Just to piggyback on what Dr. Waters has shared, we do have 2 presentations. The first presentation on middle school math placement for this coming school year will be presented by Dr. Seanarney and Donna Dome. Just to provide a little bit of a context, it's my understanding that there have been presentations and conversations about math placement in the past couple of months, and this is really an an opportunity for the team to be able to share with you kind of where we are as we're moving into the beginning of the school year. So they'll provide a little bit of an overview around process, some of the rubrics that have been used, some of the shifts that have been made as a result of last year and kind of moving through a pandemic, and then actually some of the demographic compositions of those classes as we're moving forward. The second presentation will kind of piggyback on conversations that have also taken place. I know the board has been very interested in getting a sense of now, where are we as a curricular team and as a school sort of planning for students' return in the fall to make sure that we have a lot of supports in place. And we thought it'd be really helpful to talk a little bit about the summer support that has been in place for the past couple of weeks. And so Nina Fenstermaker, I think I'm saying her first name for the very first time today, and Donna Domo will spend some time talking a little bit about that as well. So having said that, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Dr. Arney and Ms. Dome.
Thank you very much, Dr. Hart. Good evening, members of the school board, community, and administrators. My name is Seanarney, and I am the elementary supervisor for science, technology, engineering, and math. And I am proud to be presenting this evening with Donna Dome, my counterpart at the secondary level. You could advance that, Mr. Gilmer. So the purpose of our presentation for this evening is to provide an overview, some background of the placement process of our students transitioning from 6th to 7th grade, and to really ensure that the process that Donna and I help facilitate with all of the teachers is done in a very fair, equitable way. So we are creating math learners that are challenged and successful for the future. Go ahead and advance. So like Dr. Hart said, this rubric and a historical perspective has been provided to the board and to the community, parents in the past, but I'd share this for some contextual background for this evening's presentation. So prior to the pandemic, the rubric that was used to place our students transitioning from 6th grade to 7th grade really was made up of some key indicators that you see in the far left column. The PSSA scores, a Keystone Proficiency Projection, which is a metric that predicts the student's success in course placements, and specifically the Keystone assessment. And also we have used a test called the Orleans-Hanna Algebra Prognostic Test. So how a student performed on all of these assessments gives us, or gave us, an understanding of what course that they would be most successful in at the middle school. Just to provide some background, that most of our kiddos are placed into one of 3 classes transitioning from 6th to 7th grade, starting with pre-algebra 2075, pre-algebra 2076, and then algebra 1 2106 AK. So the difference between pre-algebra 2075 and 2076, and Donna, you could help me a little bit if I get this wrong, is that the students placed in 2075 are at least about 2 years behind their peers in understanding all the standards and concepts for math. So the class sizes are a little smaller. The scope and sequence and content are the same. The students just get a little bit more background in understanding the skills that they may need a little bit more support on.
So the need for a new placement rubric obviously was needed this year because we had no PSSA scores from 1920. We had no Keystone Proficiency Projections as well, because you need 3 years for that. And our current 6th graders only had 2 years with not taking it in 5th grade. So with the new placement rubric, we were fortunate enough to have data from the STAR 360 assessment when that was given at least, Dr. Arney, at least 3 times, if not 4 times this year. So we were able to see growth and achievement throughout the year to help us with our newer placement rubric. And another piece that came into play, especially because of the year that we had, was teacher recommendation. As we worked on the rubric together and took the data strictly by the numbers, students that were borderline in any of the areas, we reached out to their teachers and asked for feedback. And often the teachers reached out to the child's parents as well. So there has been a complete conversation around the math placement this year.
So just to piggyback off what Donna said, we try to make the process as objective as possible using only the metrics that we derive from the placement assessments that we've given. So in the past, we would not typically ask teachers for the recommendation, but we felt strongly that that was needed because, if you all remember, the Renaissance Star 360 assessment was brand new last year. Not only was it brand new, but the first administration was done 100% virtual. So then we transitioned to hybrid, and some of the kids did hybrid, some of the kids did virtual. So I guess my point is that we were concerned that of the integrity of the data. We did administer it 4 times, and over the course of the year, we felt that the data was strong enough to provide us with some data to support placement for students. So looking at the newly created rubric, we used the STAR 360 percentile rank. Something in the platform for the STAR 360 is called Algebra Readiness Indicator, which is a number that tells us whether or not a student is ready for the rigor of an Algebra 1 course. And then we use the Orleans-Hanna Algebra Prognostic Test again. So that metric was the same one, the only one that survived the pre-pandemic rubric. So what did we derive from this, and why is this presentation important for Donna and I, and especially for the work ahead of us? You can go ahead, Mr. Gilmer. So it gave us some data. It gave us data on where the students were placed across our 3 middle schools in their courses. So, and I'll ask Donna for her help again if I get this wrong, but in the past, when you look at course placement, most of your kiddos are placed in 2076, and that is on track. And you can see, according to this table, that again is where many of our kiddos were placed. So we have a very small percentage of our students that were actually qualified for Algebra 1. And Don, help me with this. This is about half of what it was in the past. Well, using the previous rubric, it was about 150 kids in the past. Now it's about 90.
Yeah, this is closer. We've had about 15% this year. It's between about 9 and 10.
Okay. So we did see a reduction of the students placed in 2106. But I think we saw a little bit of an uptick in the students that are in 2075, which is concerning to us, but it didn't surprise us because of the continuity of education that happened during the pandemic. So, you know, being the data divers that Donna and I are, we wanted to know who these kiddos were, so we could create a plan for the future, because otherwise they are just numbers. So this is how, and I'm going to show the next 3 slides, will show you how within each school the students placed within each course. And I'm not going to go through the demographics of each, you could all see that. But for me and for Donna, what we garnered was that we have an underrepresentation of some of our Black and Brown students in our higher advancing classes in Algebra 1, especially at Pembroke. You see there are no students there. And I'll just give everybody a second to look at that. Mr. Gilmer, you could advance that. Penndale, similarly, we have no students of color in Algebra 1 either there. But we do have a representation of students in pre-algebra. What concerns me is when you look at pre-algebra 2075, we have about 36% of our students falling in the below 2 years below. So that is a metric point that is concerning to us. And then if you could advance it to Penfield, and Penfield is has a high percentage of kids in 2075 in our Hispanic and Black population too. So we see these numbers. We've had conversations about these kids individually as well with the teachers. So, you know, now we have to create a plan to address this. So, and that's what Donna is going to talk about next, because we can't be done just by looking at the numbers.
So our next steps, one good thing is, I think, important to remember that this is a fluid process as well, because we are going to be getting PSSA data soon. So that is, we are going to be examining that again right before the school year starts to see if there are any more students that scored at the advanced level that, you know, might have been on the borderline that we could encourage to push forward. We are now bringing the STAR 360 assessment into grades 7 and 8 to help give us more data points and information on students that we need to support, both in an intervention level, but also to enrich as well. We also are adding to our learning coach staff, and we are adding 4 math coaches, 2 at the elementary level, 1 at the middle and elementary, and the other one at the middle and high school level. So we are excited to make a plan with them and to work with them, and then working with our teachers and the data as well. This year's professional development focuses on differentiation, which will address those needs as well. We continue our work with culturally responsive practices. It is a curriculum review year at the middle level, so we will be reviewing those curriculum framework documents for the pre-algebra, algebra 1, and geometry. And then finally, one of our middle schools Pembroke received the MTSS grant through Patton. So they will be working this year with the professionals from Patton and gaining professional development and going through a case study and working with their team through an MTSS process. And we hope to work with Pembroke to then scale it to the other 2 middle schools as well. So we're excited about the work ahead of us also.
Just one more comment to add on what Donna said. I feel very fortunate. We feel very fortunate to have a team around us now of coaches. As the board is aware, we are implementing a brand new K-6 math program coming this year. But I will tell you that the coaches have all met several times and are looking systemically, not within their buildings or within their grade bands, but across the district K-12 on how to use data to improve instructional practices and student outcomes. That concludes our presentation.
Thank you very much. Thank you to both of you for helping us to understand how this got so complex so quickly. If there's another silver lining to the pandemic, certainly it appears that we're using a lot more different indicators to find students' talents and trying to match them up with what would best challenge them moving forward. And this is very timely. Just a week ago, I was approached by a community member who had a daughter moving into 7th grade who had some questions about this. So I did have one question for Dr. Arney. He mentioned algebra readiness indicators, and I wondered if it was possible to understand, maybe not going through an entire formula, but how did those get assigned to a student, or how does a student earn a certain indicator, please?
Sure. So within the STAR Readiness platform, a student receives a scaled score, and the scaled score is basically a number that tells us how much content within their grade level and beyond they've mastered. So once they've measured once they've received a number higher than the content that like algebra, they would be ready for it, if that makes sense. So for our, for example, a scaled score for a student moving to 6th to 7th grade, I would look for something around an 880 to 950 in a scaled score within the platform. And that would tell me, it not only tell me by looking at it, but it would tell me because it pops up within the platform that they're ready for that course.
Right.
But I will tell you, just because a student has that or doesn't have that, That's not the only thing that I would put my hat on. I would like to look at other different data points to make that determination. And to Donna, your point, the conversations with the teachers have really been instrumental in helping us move kids ahead in courses, and also to pull them back. You know, were they attended virtually? You know, did they show a strong work ethic? You know, were they socially and emotionally ready for the rigor? So, you know, this placement process, and I remember this when I was a principal in Montgomery 10 years ago, it is always something that's heavily talked about, you know, heavily thought about, and something that we're trying to make very objective using data, but also considering the learner and the different styles that they learn, you know, so we could present the content to them in differentiated ways so that they could be successful and not only be measured by looking at a number.
Absolutely, and certainly there's so many intangible ways that students can present their talents and things like that. And in math, even though it might come off as a cut and dry, talented here understands this or not, there's so many different avenues and ways. Thank you both for also including parents in the conversation, because, you know, as we all know, being educators, we need parents at home, we need families at home to be aware of what their students are doing and whether they're having trouble getting that homework done or not, and what they think might be best for the student, not just in math, but also as they look to the new transition to the middle school and what's going to be best for their growth in a very large kind of way for them personally. So thank you both for this work. And certainly I love that the conversations are happening and they're, you know, based on varied information from varied sources and varied kinds of ways for students to show what they can do. Dr. Lewis Campbell, anything from you, my dear?
Dr. Arney, I did hear you mention that something in regards to moving students up or moving them back in that due to that virtual world. So could you tell us what factors would lead to moving them back?
So like when Donna and I, all the teachers were required to compile all of the data into a spreadsheet, and the quantifiable numbers would tell us what course that they would qualify for. So there were some kids that could have qualified for, say, Algebra 1, or maybe they were in 2075 Algebra, the lower track, and we wanted them to be in 2076. So we would have conversations with the teachers, in some cases the parents, and say, okay, tell us about your son or daughter. How, are they a good studier? Are they independent? Are they motivated? Did they attend virtually? How was their attendance? So before we push them up or pull them back, we wanted to get a larger understanding of how they presented themselves in the year. Although it is a snapshot in time, we were trying to make, Donna and I were just trying to make the best decisions based on all the information that we had. Because the last thing that we want is to not provide the kids with a rigorous trajectory to move forward, or to present them with a course that they fall, I don't want to say, they meet with too much rigor and become overly stressed in, Algebra 2, if they don't have the foundation. So I think the caveat is that the numbers tell us one thing, the placements tell us another thing, but it's the conversations that we have with the teachers and parents that really and sometimes the kids get involved to kind of give us a little bit of understanding of where they're, how they feel.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Dr. Waters, are we ready for the next presentation? And thank you so much again, Sean and Donna.
Yeah, I think they're staying on. I know Donna's doing
I
double
am.
duty tonight. So Dr. Arney, if you are not, we thank you for tonight. That was great. And I know Nina Fenstermaker is going to be joining as well. So we just kind of heard about math and what they did to get there. And we started talking and having those conversations. They talked a little bit about the support that is certainly going to be needed moving into the fall. So this is a nice segue into the next presentation, where they're also going to kind of start in the summer about supports we started to provide our students with this year to kind of get them ready for September, and also continuing the conversation as to what parents can expect in the fall for the support to continue throughout the school year. So I'm going to turn it over to Donna and Nina.
Thank you. This is a follow-up to our presentation back in April when we were presenting about the summer programs. So we just kind of wanted to let you know they just ended, well, at least the secondary ones, just ended on the 29th of July. So Bob, we can go to the next slide. We did run summer school this year, both in person and virtual. I did learn that 310 students participated in our summer school program in one or more courses for credit recovery. Because the grading is still in process with us just closing, I wish I had a number for you of how many credits we were able to recover this past summer. But 310 students did participate in the program. So that was our summer school. The summer supplemental learning, which was new this year. We had the supplemental learning with our Edgenuity program. We offered math, science, social studies, English, reading, and health, available to all students despite their performance in the class. So students use these programs as either a review of what they did this year or a preview for next year. And it was offered online. We also had in-person support that students didn't take advantage of the in-person, but did online. We did have 240 students register for that program. And what I did learn, actively involved, meaning like they completed 50% or more of their course, I'd say about a third. But some, if not most, at least did touch on some of the courses that they chose. But 240 enrolled was good. We would look for more involvement, hopefully in the future. But this was the first time we ran it, so we learned a lot from it. But just wanted to give you that number because we didn't know what was going to happen back in April. So, and then we had a summer supplemental world language as well. And we had 20 students participate in that. And that was all in person for 8 days. Supplemental Spanish and French instruction, access and practice, and listening, reading, writing, and speaking. So we did have 20 students participate in that. And I'll throw it over to Nina.
Yep. Hi, everybody. I'm Nina Fenstemaker, the curriculum supervisor for Literacy K-12. And we also ran an elementary ELD summer program. Last year, we ran this program virtually because of the environment that we were in, but it was a successful implementation virtually, and the families requested that it be virtual again. So that is what the ELD department did. And they had 95 students participate in this program. They targeted students in the beginner to intermediate levels for English learning. Next slide. And then we also ran our elementary virtual enrichment program for the second summer in a row. Again, just learning from our successes from last summer and then growing from where we knew we could improve. We continued to provide the asynchronous instruction, but we really increased our number of live meets, which was met with great success. And if you could go to the next slide. I have a few pictures that just show you some of the events that were happening. We also increased our enrollment from last year. We had almost 1,400 students enroll last year. This summer, we had 1,629 students register for our elementary program. So that's for K-6. What we did this year, which was an addition, is we purchased thematic readers. So one reader for each week of the program that aligned to a theme, and the teachers built around that theme with project-based learning experiences. So you see in the top left corner, our teachers in the rain. I have to give them kudos for that. They were an amazing group of teachers. All of our teachers are. They stood out in the rain at Penndale over 4 or 5 days, and we distributed supplies for the students to have for the virtual enrichment camp. And then if you see in the middle, that's just one picture of one student who did what project they were working on is how they could design a pair of glasses that would work for an athlete that would be in a triathlon. So they could wear the glasses swimming, biking, or running. And the student made those glasses out of Legos, and you can see that picture there. We also partnered with the North Wales Library this year. So in the bottom left corner, you can see there's a book display. And what the library did is put out a book display that aligned also to the themes that we were building our lessons around for each week. So if the students went to the local library for more books, if they wanted to learn more about a certain concept or idea, they had those book displays. You can see the meet and greet picture with all the sweet faces on there. This was a second grade meet and greet class. Teachers held meet and greets on the first day of the program. This particular teacher held 3, and this meet and greet picture had 65 students on it. I think her second meet and greet had 62, and so on and so forth. We also partnered with a program called RSVP. It's through the United Way, and there were volunteers that would meet with students through, a virtual meeting and just read. Just partner read and just be a mentor with the student. So we had about 60 students that registered for that additional piece. A lot to celebrate, and I'm proud of this program, and it's all from our teachers and our students. You can go to the next slide. In addition to the virtual program that was available for all, we did offer our SPARK program. SPARK is our acronym for Summer Program for Academic Readiness for Nights. It's a targeted program just for students in K through 3, where we aim to strengthen the foundational skills that we had identified as a need for a specific number, a select number of students. And we had a data set that we looked at to determined that students needed this type of in-person instruction, and we held that at Hatfield this year. You can go to the next slide. We had 184 students enrolled in this program. We were able to offer transportation this year, which was a new offering. And we did see more success with our enrollment numbers because of the transportation, and we were able to serve 131 students on our buses. Hats off to our bus drivers. They did a wonderful job going all the way across the district to pick up our students because we were at Hatfield this year. We also had the library open at Hatfield to not only be open for the community members, but be an available resource for students in the SPARK program to do library selection each week. And then at the very end of the program, we did a book giveaway to make sure that students had books to take home with them to continue their literacy journey when they got home with their families. We provided targeted small group instruction, so everything was in very small ratios. It was probably an average of maybe like 1 to 8. So for every adult, we had about 8 students. And that way we could keep the instruction, very targeted and very small to make sure it was what the kids needed. What we found a lot of success with is a lot of, some of our students that were coming to our in-person program had been virtual all year. We had a great success story from one of our first grade SPARK teachers. She had a student that was in her class from the school year, but during the school year, the student was virtual, and she showed up on the first day of SPARK, and she's in person, and they just had this moment where they were seeing each other for the first time in person after a whole year. And the teacher, of course, was like, "You're so tall." But she said once she got this little girl in her classroom in person, around the small group reading table, her reading really took off in the summer program this summer. And those are the things we hold on to. You can go to the next slide. So obviously, in addition to the summer programs that we wanted to offer all of our students, we have continued plans for 21-22. So we have a refocus on teaching and learning, and I'm hoping that we really can stay focused on what we need to do in the classroom, and hopefully put a lot of other things behind us. We obviously need to continue focusing on differentiation strategies and making sure that we have the tools and the resources to differentiate instruction and meet the needs of all of our students. We were able to hire a reading coach for grades 7 through 12. So we did already have literacy coaches, and we have a Department of Reading specialists at the elementary level that are ready to support our elementary grades. We wanted to make sure that our students at the secondary level had the same opportunities for support. So we hired that reading coach in those grades. We're going to continue to implement our structured literacy curriculum, which is called Foundations, and we are providing targeted and strategic coaching for all teachers in K-1 to continue to strengthen that implementation across the board. Our coaches are doing a wonderful job connecting teachers across buildings, building bridges across grades, so that we have those vertical conversations, those vertical alignments. What were the big concepts that we need to make sure the next grade level, hits right away? So continuing those vertical conversations and building bridges. And then, of course, as we've all been saying, just continued use of assessments to drive our instructional decision making. We're going to continue to use the STAR 360 benchmark at the elementary level. And then what we're going to, with going into second year at elementary, we have an opportunity to dig a little bit deeper with this assessment and use it in deeper and more powerful ways. There are curriculum-based measures and progress monitoring tools within the assessment platform that we are going to be more strategic with this year to ensure that we're really getting down to the needs of our students and putting in progress monitoring benchmarks to make sure that they are responding to the instruction and the programs that we put together. All right, so that's all I have in terms of slides.
Thank you so much. I tell you what, you had a tough job this year. The only thing worse than trying to bring a student back and trying to get them to learn throughout the summer is when they had a rough year like this past year would have handed to so many students. So thank you for getting them to buy back in. I'm so happy to hear the number of folks that signed up to make sure that their students were prepared for the coming year, whether it was, as you said, to go back over some things they might have missed or to look ahead in the future. And thank you so much to all the teachers who, after a tough year, came back and said, yeah, I'm going to keep on helping these kids. Bus drivers and certainly our volunteers, and included in North Wales Library, our community partners. That's wonderful. Thank you so much for that. I think, as we said before, having families buy in, especially as we get to this new academic year and we find out more about what may have gone wrong that we didn't see, or the students weren't totally in realization of, these assessments that we give in school and what our teachers are doing in the classrooms and virtually in very complete and thorough ways. That effort can be doubled if parents and families are also staying in communication with their teachers and their guidance counselors, so that when we all come back to something that looks hopefully a lot more normal, we'll be able to, catch these students where they are, understand what they need to have done for them, and work all together to do our best to get that done. So congratulations on a job well done during one of the toughest times to have to do it. Good job.
Thank you.
All right, so that's the end of our presentations, Mr. McBain.
Can I ask a question?
Yep, sure.
Yeah, I echo the sentiments of Mr. McBain, and thank you all for doing what you've done. I was just wondering, you had an impact of increased attendance, and you attributed that to having transportation provided. And I'm just wondering, is this something that could possibly continue in next summers and so on and so forth, by having transportation, by having some of it virtual, as well as bringing those students back in person? So those are some of my questions, as well as, was there any demographic information taken? Do we know who attended summer school, the makeup of the students?
I don't have that data at this time.
But was any taken? That
I don't believe so, but we would be able to ascertain that for sure.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would provide some insight as well.
Mm-hmm. Yes, agreed.
Dr. Campbell, it's a great question. It's a question that Dr. Hart actually asked me last week as well, and something that we kind of already had, in our tickler to look into. So it's not data that we necessarily specifically collected in our attendance, but data that we can get, through digging deeper, because we have our students' names and attendance records of who attended and who did not.
Thank you both so much.
And Dr. Lewis Campbell, just your question about transportation. We're hoping that we could do that again. We were really excited to be able to do that this year, and we were able to do that with some of the funding, that school districts have been getting with the ESSER funds and things like that, especially with a portion having to go, to learning loss and things like that. So that was one of the things that I know when Nina and I first started talking about that, we were really excited when that we got a yes on transportation. So if we can continue it, I know Dr. Hart, Dr. Arney, and Mrs. Fenstermaker will certainly want to do that. So we'll keep that in the back of our minds for next year.
All right. Thank you so much, folks. We really appreciate the work you've done and taking some time out of August here to let us know everything that's going on. Thank you. Do we have our student representative with us, Mr. Gilmer?
No, neither representative was able to make it tonight. They both sent a message ahead of time. We're looking forward to our next meeting.
Very good. We'll let them have a little bit of summer as well. No problem. Any other business for us tonight for additional topics? All right. Hearing none, we go on to the public comment section. And I wanted to be clear about this, Mr. Gilmer. I believe the text at the beginning of the meeting said 5 minutes. Is that a 3-minute segment that we typically do per speaker? Sorry, 3 minutes per speaker, yes. Thank you very much. And again, I'll mention that tonight's agenda of a committee meeting was simply to discuss the middle school math placement for 7th graders, rising 7th graders, and as you just heard, the new academic supports for students. Certainly there might be some other topics that our community would want to speak about, even though the entire board isn't here, and even though we'll be speaking about those on the 10th and 19th of this month. So tonight we still want to hear from you, but I was hoping we could limit this to 45 minutes to give all of the 15 people who signed up to be here a full 3 minutes if they wish. So Mr. Gilmer, do we have anybody who would like to make a public comment? Oh, did I need to read this? I need to read this.
Yes, please. If you could read.
All right. I'm new at running a meeting. I don't know if you can tell. Tonight's meeting is a regularly scheduled committee meeting. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it's necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the committee during the meeting. To ensure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the committee state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to matters being discussed at tonight's meeting or matters that may come before the ECI committee. The committee chair may ask the individual to yield to the next speaker, and we are ready to go.
Yeah, and just a reminder, if you would like to make comment, you have to hit the raise hand button at the bottom of your screen. And once you do that, I'll be able to call on you. Up first, we have Mr. Patchell. Mr. Patchell, I've enabled your microphone. When you're ready to begin, you can state your name and address and begin your comments, please.
Oh, yeah, my name is William Patchell. I've spoken many, many times. I mean, I've been in here 12 years. So, you know, I've been speaking with a sense of what's going on and what isn't, political changes, new agendas, mathematics, the number of students. So it's very important to understand. Now, I'm retired, so I get to see and I collect information just by talking to people. Now, you know what? Maybe the kids K through 6, you know, maybe they're obedient and do what you want, you know, but they're pretty confused. Look, if we go back to these masks thing again, what do you think people are going to want to do? You know what? To have success in that kind of environment, oh yeah, I got to ride the bus again. We may get knocked out. There's so many uncertainties. Okay, they just started with these evictions. You know what I think? I think you're going to lose about 200 students here because I don't believe that out of all the people that live in this cobble of, you know, political entities here, oh yeah, not one eviction. So you don't even know what's the stability of the student population is going to be. And when I see these numbers, what? K through 6? That's about 5,000 or 6,000 kids. And we have how many? So let's do a percentage basis. I've been trying to get some right to knows. It's pretty difficult. Mr. Skaraki, he's on a stand down. He doesn't want to give any information at all. I had to go over to Representative Todd Stevens' office to get somebody to somehow read to the district, hey, you have a legal responsibility to answer my questions. I understand some of these questions could be very difficult. They could be embarrassing. Okay, so when we get going to school again, I saw that the kindergarten enrollment, 775. You're bleeding people so badly, I can't believe it. In another 10 years, you'll be lucky if you have not 13 elementary schools, you have about 6. You have to shut them down. And then at the higher end, at the high school, talk to some people that are working. I said, where do you go? Oh, I go to North Penn. Are you going to go back? Why would I want to go back to that place? Me and my friends are going to get together and we're going to study at my house and we're going to be on some kind of online thing. I said, oh, well, what about the prom? It's very important. Who cares about the prom? Nobody cares about that. I said, you have to, there's a dysfunctional thing between the teachers and the students. I tell you, half these students, if they could get out at 16 and go on to Monco and get a GED, they would probably enjoy that. So there's a lot to be done. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Patchell. Mr. Gilmer, anybody else?
Yes, a couple more hands just came up. Up next would be Jesse Bradica. Jesse, I've enabled your microphone. Soon you're ready to begin. State your name and address and begin your comments.
Hi, Jesse Bradica, Upper Gwinnett. I just have a couple questions, mainly about block scheduling, which wasn't brought up, and I'm a little disappointed about that, being that I have 2 middle schoolers now, and my advanced math daughter actually struggled with block scheduling, and I have some special ed friends who struggled with block scheduling. And I haven't heard anything from administration or the board as to the success of that overall, or where that's going in the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bradica. I believe we had a meeting on that through ECI quite a while ago, and would be searchable on board docs, but if not, certainly shoot us an email. We'll try to get you that. Thank you very much. Mr. Gilmer, anybody else?
Yes, up next we have Jason Lanier. Jason, I've enabled your microphones. You're ready to begin. You can state your name and address and begin your comments.
Jason Lanier, Lansdale, Pennsylvania. I wanted to first say that summer school, it sounds like you guys did a pretty bang up job getting these kids back up to where they should have been. I disagree a lot with why we shut down last fall and why, and the struggles kids had continuing throughout the spring, but I give you kudos for helping them make up their sort of lost year of education. I'm concerned that's going to happen again going this year should we do this mask thing and all the conditions, but that's a discussion for a different day. What I was hoping to hear on this call was more about the equity practice, in inclusion practice, and the anti-racism built into the curriculum that has been pushed sort of in words. I don't know how much has been implicated, and I've been asking about this for many, many months. And I hear equity being used quite often, and I'm not exactly sure what that means when it comes to, math, which is rather cut and dry. I can understand helping kids that need help, and I can understand kids that don't need help maybe being pushed up a little bit so that they're working a little bit harder, because as we know, especially in the middle school, kids that have idle time are kids that tend to get in trouble a little bit easier. That's across the board. That has to do with not being challenged necessarily. So I'm really curious as to how this works in this equity piece. What does that mean? Does that mean like they did in Lansdale County, Virginia, or they did out in Oakland, California, or in St. Louis, Missouri, where they actually start lowering standards to get a better outcome of education, meaning better numbers? Or is the idea is to push everybody or try to work with every student to help increase their knowledge so that they can perform at a higher number? I should say at a higher grade level. I guess this still sort of troubles me, because when I read the limited information that has been directed towards the community, at least to me, which was nothing directly, go find this based upon what we set out. The language in some of those documents presented by various sources on anti-racism talk about white culture, and some of the verbiage that we're trying to work against seems to be not a white culture. It just seems to be a culture for anybody who's trying to succeed. in fact, Dr. Arney brought it up in work ethic. That's not a cultural white thing. Why are we doing the segregation based upon race? Why aren't we just saying it's good to work hard and better yourself? That's all I have to say. I'd like, if anybody can give me some direction on this, I would really appreciate it. Thank you very much. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Lanier. Hope to hear from you soon. Mr. Gilmer?
There are no more hands up at this time, so that'll conclude public comment. One hand just popped up. I apologize. If you want to go for
Certainly.
one more. Okay.
Sure.
Up next, we have, apologize for that. Roseanne Gadd. Roseanne, you do not have up-to-date Zoom, so that will not be happening tonight. So just to keep in mind for all residents, when you join these meetings, you do need the most up-to-date version of Zoom. If you do not, you're not able to use the microphone feature. So that would be the last public comment of the night.
Thank you very much, Mr. Gilmer. I appreciate your attempts to let that last person have a comment. Hopefully we can hear from them soon. Item agenda number 7, a summary of items recommended for work session and/or action meeting. I don't believe we had anything set forward through this committee this evening. The next meeting date for the ECI committee, pardon me, I'm a little slow on the computer today, is Tuesday, September 7th at 6 p.m. Please join us right back here on Zoom. I believe that means it's time for adjournment. If I have a motion, please.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you so much, everybody. We appreciate your work very much.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.